friends, it's Therese and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me talking about my top 10-ish books of 2020. So let's get into it because my raw footage for my top 5 of 2020 was like 20 minutes. So sitting at number 10 of most impressive books or best books of 2020, that is Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. This is a YA contemporary novel following a young atheist who has moved to a Catholic school and, kind of not really up in his area. He finds a student who kind of speaks against what the teachers were teaching and thinks they are also an atheist, but in reality, she wants to be a priest. So she asks him to join this little hidden club of theirs called Heretics Anonymous, where they can be themselves without fear of judgment or following a dress code. Really good book. I think Katie Henry has really good comedic timing. It was really fun and quick, easy read. There were lots of commentary on what it means to be Catholic and kind of the things that some Catholics tend to pick and choose versus what we are taught. And then on top of that, there's also an undertone of just the difference between tolerating someone and actually accepting them, and which version of that certain schools or certain people under the Catholic faith tend to choose. So I highly recommend if you're looking for a quick read. You don't have to be really religious to understand it. They do a pretty good job of expressing everything, and even then it's not heavily focused on religion. It just has those little undertones that I think is really important and really good. And I don't know what it is about characters named Max, but their precious needs to be protected. That's all I'm saying. Sitting at number 9 is Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. This is Sarah J Maas's exploration into adult high fantasy. It's her debut into adult high fantasy. Basically, think about it as a murder mystery. Throw in everything about mythology that you may know from the usual Norse, maybe some Greek, some biblical stuff, then toss in a fairy, a werewolf, demons, random things as well, and then sprinkle on some sexual tension. That is this book. I really enjoyed this book. I was really hesitant to pick it up for the longest time. I picked it up and finished it pretty recently too. Yeah, I finished it in December. Wow, my wrap-up's gonna be fun. I really enjoyed this book and I can't wait for the second book. I highly recommend. Sarah J Maas just has this way of writing really kind of cliche romances where you have a feeling you know where this is gonna go. And it goes that way, but you're still somehow shocked. And to boot, you're also somehow shocked at the very cliche plot twists that get thrown in there, but it somehow makes you feel better about it when it happens. And I cried. I think the last 100 or so pages, I was in tears, which was fun because my best friend got to see me cry over a book, I think once or twice. Then my partner, because we were on a phone call while he was playing video games and I was watching him, heard me cry. So, great bonding experience for all of us, really. But I feel like they've also just seen me cry a lot because that's my personality. But yeah, highly recommend, and I can't wait for the second book to come out. Don't know when that's coming out. Hopefully it's for a while because this was 800 pages long. But somehow it was less daunting and easier to read than Priory the Orange Tree. Sitting at number 8 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Ironic how I can have an author both on my disappointing and my top best books of 2020. But this is a spin-off of the original Grishaverse. This follows a cast of, just a cast of kind of not the greatest people in the world trying to pull off a heist by stealing a person out of a prison. Yeah, a high, heavily guarded prison. Think your Alcatraz of the day. I really like this. I think Leigh Bardugo, once she kind of got out of the original Shadow and Bone world and kind of created this one, without so much a big factor into the magic system, you got to see her ability to create very layered characters and very diverse characters as well, and also form a really cohesive plot that makes sense and is understandable and doesn't get you confused or angry at the ending of the duology. So very excited, and I'm really happy that I got a chance to buddy read this with some of my friends, and I also got the exclusive editions, which has black sprayed edges and red end pages. I have very low standards for how books should look. Sitting at number 7 is The Wolf of Oreñaro by K.S. Veloso. This is an adult high fantasy novel following Talion, who has been kind of the queen of her country for the past few years, but hasn't been very well liked because people think that she killed her father and then kicked out her husband the day she was coronated, which isn't entirely correct. Now, in an attempt to kind of bring her country back together, she has to go find her husband and, make peace with whatever the heck happened and try to reunite their kingdoms, and things happen. I really love this book. I read it for Trick or Treat-a-thon, which is a readathon that I hosted, but it was really fun reading this. I had a good time. I slowed down a little bit with my reading because of this, because it has a fair amount of world building that you have to kind of sit down and understand, but it's not so difficult that you have to read an index continuously for it. I highly recommend it. It's very accessible, and Talion is the female protagonist that I like to read about, where they're not super flouncy or well loved, and they're kind of masculine and doesn't really fit in the role that everyone wants them to fit into, but she somehow makes it work and grows along the way to become the ruler that her country actually needs. But yeah, can't wait to pick up the next book. I believe this is a trilogy, so I think the trilogy is almost done. Nonetheless, excited to pick up the second book. When that will be, I don't know, but I have a New Year's resolution to finish a lot of series in 2021. Sitting at number 6 is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This is a YA historical fantasy novel following Celine, who moves to New Orleans after fleeing Paris, France, due to circumstances a little unknown. There, she realizes there is a world beneath her own, filled with vampires and werewolves in New Orleans. Which, New Orleans is such a wonderful paranormal backdrop, and I'm just appalled that no one else really uses New Orleans as that backdrop. So I was really hesitant to come into this book. I had issues with Renee Ahdieh's writing during A Flame in the Mist, which I have talked about several times, and I have made a video on this channel about. Will I share it with you guys? No, because that is early Therese, and we don't talk about it. But I really enjoyed this book. I think Renee Ahdieh has grown since the last time I have read her novel. She has created this wonderful hidden world and these wonderful characters, and is pretty inclusive in her writing. We have a POC main character, lots of side POCs, love interests, as well as LGBT characters. Her writing is just it's flowery without taking away too much from your imagination, and then the plot and the twists and the murder aspects and the mystery aspects also add to it, and it's just such a good book, and I can't wait to pick up The Damned when that happens. Moving right along to top 5, sitting at number 5 is After the Flood by Cassandra Montag. This is an adult post-apocalyptic novel following this mother trying to find her other daughter after several floods have ravaged the earth, and her husband had since kidnapped the daughter in an attempt to save her from the floods. This was one of the first reads of 2020, and I literally think about it so much. So much. Someone mentions it, and I'm you have to read it. It's just that good. Someone thinks about the cover, and my brain knows, and it's just such a good book. It brings, not only does it have amazing writing and a wonderful world building, but it also brings about the question as to what you would do in this scenario, and whether or not you are willing to sacrifice a child in order to find the other one, and how far you are willing to go to make your kind of broken family make your broken family feel a little whole again, and what family should actually mean. Amazing novel. Amazing novel. I cannot talk about this book enough. If you guys haven't picked it up, please do. like I need more friends to talk about this book with. I still have so many feelings, and I feel like this is going to be one of the books that I reread in 2021 because it's just that good. Sitting at number 4 is Cloaked in Shadow by Ben Alderson, another January 2020 read. This is a YA high fantasy novel following sweet little Zachariah, who is a shapeshifter who is kind of forced to enlist in the king's army, but since he doesn't qualify as a normal shapeshifter, he tries to keep a low profile and somehow gains the attention of the very handsome, the very mysterious, and the very sweet Prince Hadrian. This is an amazing love story with lots of fantasy and magic, main subject focus. Highly recommend the series. I buddy read this with TB and Maddie. It's just such a good book and so underhyped, and it's a self-pub as well, so, you know, gotta support those self-pub books. Just read the book, read the entire trilogy, and then come back to me with all your feelings and all your emotions, and it's just so good. And I have no other words about this book besides for that. It's just, it set up my 2020 to be wonderfully gay, and I've been happier for it. Sitting at number 3 is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is a spin-off series of the Infernal Devices. We are now in Edwardian London, where the Infernal Devices are kind of adults and have children, and they are teenagers. This follows Cordelia as she returns to London with her family after some kind of dispute with her father that she is unbeknownst to her. There she finds love and mystery, confusion, and lots of demons and death. So normal Shadowhunter stuff. I really enjoyed this book. One of my favorite reads of 2020, she says, as she's talking about her favorite reads of 2020. Again, Cassie has done it. She grows as a writer with every single book that she creates. You can see even from the first page to the last page how much she grows as a writer. Her characters are complex. Her worlds are getting more and more, not difficult, but defined, in depth. Complex, yes, we'll reuse that word. Getting more and more complex without losing its simplicity and accessibility. Her writing is just, it's top tier, and I know this will be one of the last Shadowhunter series that I will get for the rest of my life, because it's Chain of Gold, and then it's the Wicked Powers, and then that's it. And then she moves on to adult writing, like adult novels. So it's definitely like one of those series where like you can see that she's just like containing herself to be able to write in YA still, and you can see where the new adult kind of roots are beginning to grow and settle. And I can't wait for Chain of Iron, which comes out in March, which means I die all over again and I vlog and die on camera. Sitting at number 2 isn't so much a book but a series of books, and that is the entirety of the Nekoma versus Karasuno matches in Haikyuu, which I believe is like volumes 30 to 37, 38, I think. It's a long set, but I love this primarily because Nekoma is one of my favorite matches. It's one of my favorite teams of all time. And to boot, we get to see this culmination of both these teams having grown this past season and grow not only as a team, but as individuals, and see how their individual personalities and traits and abilities come together to become this magnificent team that has made it to nationals and is going against this long time standing tradition between their two schools. It's a very emotional time because, again, one of my favorite teams, and then to boot, I have some of my favorite characters in Karasuno as well. So it's just, I cried. I cried reading the end of that match, and it will forever be one of my favorite matches out of this entire series, and I cannot wait to get the manga, nor can I wait to find a way to somehow put the match on like some corkboard and then just stick it on my wall. Sitting at number 1, finally, is A Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a YA contemporary novel following two sisters on separate ends of the world, more or less. One is in New York and one is in the Dominican Republic. They have both lived separate lives up until this point when their father dies and they are inexplicably brought together. This is all written in prose, and I cried. That's really, I feel like once you hit like top 5 of my favorite books of the year. It's just me crying for like the next 10 minutes. Again, Elizabeth Acevedo has done it. The Poet X was on my top of 2019, I believe, 2019, 2018. She just has a wonderful way with words and a wonderful way of kind of explaining the diaspora of what it... Yeah, diaspora? Yeah, diaspora. I'm thinking of the girl from Winx Club who fought against, who was trying to go after Sky because she was engaged to him. Kind of the diaspora of the situation, as well as what it means to be an American versus someone living in the Dominican Republic, and the different kind of fears and concerns and values that the different girls have and how that comes together. I really love this supporting women scenario that happens at the end, on top of just, it's such a good book, and I highly recommend this book to literally anyone, as well as any other of Elizabeth Acevedo's works, even though I have not yet with Fire and High. That's what's happening in January. Moving on to honorable mentions, because again, not a Therese video if we don't have honorable mentions. The first one is Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. This is the 6th book to the Throne of Glass series, and basically is basically Chaol's perspective while the events of Empire of Storms is happening. I was really hesitant to get into this, primarily because Chaol and I have not been seeing eye to eye since book 1. Even then, I didn't really like him that much in book 1 either. But here we get to see him develop more as a character. I feel like the development that he lacked in the subsequent books really comes out in this book, and we see him grow as a person and just become just someone tolerable. We also get to see a new cast of characters that will play a bigger role in the 7th book when I pick that up. Depends on when it comes out in paperback. But we get to see them, and I really enjoyed seeing this cast of characters and kind of seeing all the different inspirations that Sarah J Maas took from, primarily with, I believe, the Mongolians. And just, I cried. I cried reading this book. And there are not enough words that shocked me than having to text Andrea, "I am crying. Send." I mean, if she can somehow get me to like a character that I dislike strongly for the majority of the series, then Sarah J Maas can do anything, and my wallet will just be thankful for it. The next honorable mention is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the sequel to The Cruel Prince, which involves Jude Duarte, who has been taken from the world of the human as a small child and then sent to live in the fairy. This is the sequel. Again, I was really hesitant because it's right there. The Cruel Prince was good. It wasn't the most riveting read, but it was certainly good. I definitely preferred it a bit more on the audiobooks than I did actually reading the book. So I was really hesitant to pick up this book. And this book surprised me so much. It not only moved a lot faster than The Cruel Prince, but we get to see the development of all the characters really speed up and pick up its pace in this short span of the book. And then the ending was a surprise. Like, talk about your political intrigue. The next honorable mention is Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. This is a short story collection kind of focusing on Black lives and in different genres and in different times of the future and with different types of topics. I really enjoyed this. There were a couple of short stories, as with all short story collections, where some of them just kind of flew over my head, but for the most part I was really enthralled with all these short stories, and not only their message that was pretty out there in terms of like, not like out there in terms of like hard to understand, but kind of more, that are more overt than they are hidden. I don't know the word for it, it'll probably come to me at the end of the video. I really enjoyed this and I highly recommend it, and I can't wait to see what else he comes up with in the future. Just such a good short story collection, and not what I was expecting when I purchased this book. Like, genuinely not expecting, but in the best way possible. Why I'm No Longer Talking About Racism to White People by Remi Eddo-Lodge. This is a non-fiction book discussing basically why this author is no longer talking to white people about race. I really enjoyed this book. It does kind of dive more into British history than what a lot of people were expecting. I really enjoyed this book. It not only opened up a new perspective in terms, well, not like a new perspective, but it offered a voice from a different part of the world that we don't hear about, since America's racism is so globalized, and that's where a lot of the voices tend to come from. So this was really interesting, and it kind of did open my eyes to a couple new perspectives, primarily of like raising children as in like a mixed household / adopting children whose ethnicity is not your own. And yeah, I highly recommend this book. I think that while it does not have roots in American racism, learning about racism in other parts of the world can really help grasp. I'm out of breath because I'm dehydrated. Can really help grasp exactly how to be anti-racist and how to help deal with the world that we are living in. And the last honorable mention is A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is a YA high fantasy series following a lot of things. First, it follows Laya, who has been enslaved in order to find out exactly what happened to her brother and where he is. The other point of view is from Elias, who is a soldier, but kind of is wondering if he wants to remain a soldier. And it's just such a good series. The first book, An Ember in the Ashes, is absolutely amazing. The world building is amazing. The writing style, top tier. And then Sabaa Tahir tops herself with the sequel, which I was hesitant to pick this up because, you know, sometimes some books suffer through some sequel syndrome where it just moves really slowly, but this does not move slowly in the slightest. It is so good, and I highly recommend it. And I have 2 more books to finish, but sadly I need to wait for the paperback of A Reaper in the Gates and a paperback for The Sky and the Storm, because I've got them all in paperback and might as well finish it out. So will I finish this series in 2021? We'll have to wait until 2023 for that one. But that is it for my top books of 2020 with some honorable mentions. Do you guys agree with this list? What are your top books? Have you guys read these books? What do you guys think? Do they deserve a place on your list, honorable mentions, or top 10 or otherwise? But until next time, hit like, subscribe, comment, and I'll talk to you guys in my comments and in my social media. Until then, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and I'll see you guys next week with probably my January TBR and my December wrap-up. So until then, bye!